Hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Today, I want to bring up a question that many piano teachers and parents often hesitate to talk about openly. Is it really a good idea for a student to study piano with two teachers at the same time? At first glance, this might sound like nothing more than a matter of personal freedom. Some might even see it as a sign of being more open-minded or progressive. But in reality, the issue goes much deeper. It touches on a student's cognitive development, the integrity of a teaching system, the responsibility of a teacher, and even the philosophy of education itself. So today, I'd like to look at this from several perspectives. Whether you're a student, a parent, or a fellow teacher, I hope you'll stay with me until the end. Many people ask, what's wrong with having two teachers? Isn't it better to hear more than one opinion? That way, I can take the best of both and learn faster. On the surface, that sounds perfectly reasonable, especially for students who already have some foundation. But here's the real question. It's not whether you can do it, but whether you can actually handle the complexity. Because the very fact that you're still a student means you're still building your judgment and your cognitive framework. And at that stage, it's very hard to distinguish between a simple stylistic difference and a fundamental conflict in teaching philosophy. For example, one teacher says, relax your wrist, while another insists, keep your wrist firm. One says, shape the phrase first, while another says, get every note correct before worrying about expression. So who do you listen to? You may think you're gaining multiple perspectives, but in reality, what often happens is that the formation of a coherent learning system keeps getting interrupted. It's like trying to build a house. One day you hire a traditional Chinese builder for the foundation, the next day you bring in a Western craftsman to redo the wiring, then you decide you like Japanese aesthetics and want to redesign the whole thing again. The result? The house never gets built because there was never a unified structural logic to begin with. At its core, piano study is not about collecting bits of information. It's about building a system. Now, let's flip perspectives and think about this from the teacher's side. A responsible piano teacher doesn't just teach notes and fingerings. They think systematically about a student's foundation, rhythm, control, expression, long-term goals, personality, and even character development. They then design a personal learning path tailored to that student. But when a student splits their time between two teachers, that carefully designed path gets broken and sometimes even steers in the wrong direction. Worse still, when problems inevitably arise, who's accountable? If a student struggles, is it because teacher A explained poorly? Because teacher B gave conflicting directions? Or simply because the student got mixed up between the two approaches? No one can say for sure. And that uncertainty strikes at the heart of what a teacher values most: their teaching reputation, their integrity as an educator, and the system they've worked so hard to build. That's why any teacher with real principles and a clear philosophy will instinctively reject this kind of two-teacher arrangement. Once the system is broken, the lines of responsibility blur, and the trust structure collapses. So let's ask a deeper question. What kind of students or parents usually choose the two-teacher path in the first place? From my observation, it rarely comes from a well-reasoned decision. It often stems from fragmented thinking, unstable confidence, or even a controlling mindset. Some are fragmented thinkers. They believe the more they hear, the more they'll know, and the faster they'll learn. But they miss the fact that piano study is not about gathering information. It's about building cognition. Some are waverers. They lack a stable learning philosophy and confidence. The moment progress slows or frustration hits, they think the solution is to switch teachers, switch environments, switch explanations. But real growth usually comes from sticking with a system and trusting the process. And then there are control-driven parents. They treat their child's education like a management project. Teacher A for technique, teacher B for musicality, teacher C for competition strategy. They want to orchestrate everything. But in doing so, they unintentionally destroy the child's most precious asset, focus and continuity. These parents are not unloving, nor are they careless, but they fail to grasp one essential truth. Education is never a jigsaw puzzle. It requires wholeness and trust. So what should we, as teachers, do? I believe our most fundamental responsibility is not only to teach skills, but also to protect the integrity of the learning system. That means being clear about our boundaries and from the very beginning, having the courage to state our teaching philosophy and the principles we stand by. That itself is a form of respect for both the craft of teaching and the long-term growth of the student. A good teacher doesn't just pass on technique. They shape cognition, they transmit values. Which is why this is not simply about choosing a teacher. It's about the student's learning logic, the teacher's professional integrity, and the parent's educational philosophy. What truly matters is not wavering back and forth, but asking yourself, what do I really want? And then having the courage to commit and stay the course. Thank you for joining me today. If you're a student, a parent, or a fellow teacher, I hope this has given you some perspective and maybe even some courage. If you found this episode helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. I'll see you in the next one.